All right, folks. Let me actually start off with a small apology, advanced apology. We have slides that are moving by themselves. Our kids are actually adorable germ monsters sometimes, and I've gotten a cold from my kid, especially when they're going to school. So I've been fighting it all week, and I'm speaking all week as well. So hopefully my voice holds up, but if I do cough a little bit, I'll try to use the mute button. But let's talk design patterns. And for all of you watching, thank you. Thank you so much for tuning in here to XamExpertDay. This is a group of very passionate people. We love our stuff and we love this community. So thank you for being here. Now, I think I have 45 minutes, which is not a lot of time, but I will start with a few slides which are not important. I know there's a GitHub repo where I can push this. So I did want to kind of start things off to lay the foundation of what we're talking about, slow down a little bit, and then I want to get to code as soon as I can. So I am Sam Basu, and that's my social handle in case you need to get hold of me anytime after. We are all living through a global pandemic. I think most of you are in Europe, at least the organizers, and most of you watching. I so wish I can be there in person with you, but at least we get to hang out online, right? So I hope you are well and your families are well taken care of and be as productive as you can. Like Gerald mentioned, he was asking where I am at. I am on the other side of the little pond on a little island called United States, and I live in Northwest Pennsylvania. We have 5 very big lakes up north. I am by one of those lakes called Lake Erie, so it's beautiful most of the year, but we do get a lot of snow as well in winter time. But yeah, that's where I am at, and let's talk design patterns. Okay. Now, this is, based on who you talk to, sometimes this gets a little contentious because people have strong opinions, and that's perfectly fine. Design patterns are essentially things we use to have some sanity in our code bases, especially for bigger apps that we are writing. But the one thing to kind of keep in mind is we shouldn't be doing some things just because it's cool, just because everybody is trying to do it. It should make sense for your app and your team, right? So it's okay to not follow the principles to the T. As long as it's working for you, you are golden, right? So choose, as we always say, the right tools for the right job, right? So I will talk about 2 major patterns that we see, especially in the mobile space. I know this is for all things mobile, but I will mention some other stacks as well. But there are other patterns as well, but choose what works for your app. All right, so let's start with MVVM. And again, most of you, since you're tuned into XamExpertDay, I'm guessing you're coming from a .NET background. Maybe you do some JavaScript enough to be dangerous. But this has kind of been our bread and butter for especially XAML and .NET and C# devs for a long, long time. This MVVM is a design pattern. It's got nothing to do with any particular technology per se. It is a pattern, right? So you have the view, you have the view model, and the model. So the model is essentially your data, right? And if you have the right abstractions, it doesn't matter how you get the data from. Could be SQL Server running under your table, could be cloud services, doesn't matter. It's your data, right? And you write to it however you do. The view is meant to be slim and it's meant to be a little dumb, so it does less. And the view model is the key here that does the orchestration. It hands things to the view. The view is essentially what the user is seeing, the UX that your app offers. Now, the model sends over the data, handles it over to the view model, and then the view model writes it back if need be. But in between the view and the view model, that's where the orchestration happens. And the view model is essentially, the view model could be talking to multiple models, kind of pulling together what the user needs to see on a single screen. And there are 2 key things that help with MVVM design pattern, 2 key paradigms. One is data binding. Like you have some objects with some data and you have some UI. How do you bind it together? How do you make sure they update? You can do one way or you can do 2-way, which is easier. And then we have commands, which are essentially used for how you raise events, and you can have multiple subscribers. Some frameworks like MVVM Lite will use like a relay command. So that's a common paradigm in how we kind of hook things together. But the whole point of all of this is to have that separation of concerns. So Your code is a little bit more testable, unit testing, it's a little bit more maintainable, and you have a little bit more sanity in your code bases, right? So as with any design pattern, there is no one way of doing things. There are things that are built into some frameworks. There are additional MVVM frameworks you can bring in. So there's a lot of love, and we have had things for quite some time. I'm listing some of the popular ones here, but there are other MVVM frameworks. Laurent Bunyan back in the days of WPF, MVVM Lite was super popular, still is. We have MVVM Cross, we have Brian Lagunas, Dan Siegel, those folks maintain Prism. So lots of love out there. But some of this, as we shall see, is actually built into Xamarin.Forms. So you don't absolutely have to pick something, but if you do, these frameworks will do some of the heavy lifting for you. And we'll get into some of the cruxes of what MVVM frameworks do. It's not just about data binding and commanding. They also bring in some more patterns, like how are you finding the right view models for your views? Is there like a factory pattern? Is there like a repository pattern? So there are lots of these patterns that come into play. And again, they do come with a little bit of complexity. So it comes down to what works for your app, right? I see the comments here, and Gerald is cheering me on. Thank you, Gerald. Okay, now let's talk about MVU. Now this is, it's relatively new for .NET developers, but like other folks have been using this for quite some time, especially if you come from like a functional programming mindset, F# and the few of you who have wanted to do like F# with Xamarin.Forms and like Fabulous. This actually started with Elm back in the days, and it's been widely adopted for F#. This is a simpler model in which you don't have the strict segregation of the view and the view model. The model essentially is not just data. It essentially means the state of your application, right? So it is in a way more tied to the view, like what the user is seeing at that point of time. And the model drives the view directly in terms of what the updates are to the DOM, to the visual tree, and then the view dispatches messages through commands, and then you come back and you update the state. And the state can be mutable or immutable based on how you're doing it. But this is a simpler pattern, and like some of the web frameworks actually use this a lot. And it's just a nicer way to kind of look at things. It's different, still keeps it clean, and depends a little bit on the framework to render your visual tree cleanly. So this has gotten some love of late, especially from the .NET community. We'll talk about James Clancy and the Comet framework that he has. But before we go into maybe just mobile, I want to talk about like where you apply some of these things, because we talked about two of the major patterns. So most of you again come from .NET. This is what we are sitting on right now, and it's .NET 5. .NET 6 is coming in November 2021. Things are looking great, and the whole unified platform wasn't entirely true in last year. They kind of made sure the Blazor runtimes were integrated, but now in .NET 6 you're going to have the Mono and the .NET Core runtimes much more integrated together as a single runtime on which like .NET MAUI and other things are going to run. So it's a good story, and the tools of our trade have come a long way. I am on a Mac nowadays for my main dev machine. I also run Windows as a VM, also under my desk. So you will see me on VS for Mac. But if you are, by the way, using VS for Mac, I have been using a preview, but the first public bits are out. There was a closed beta, so give that a shot. So the tools of our trade are great. And let's talk about three things here, right? So I know we're talking about just mobile, but you got mobile, web, and desktop. And unless you are working on a startup, you're doing multiple things, right? So let's take a quick look as to where things apply. This is my view of how you do mobile these days. Lots of options, right? And if you want to stick to web stuff, go to your web stuff. There is a lot of tooling, mobile web, progressive web apps, JavaScript native apps, and those are all great in Visual Studio to be building, mobile apps that are good citizens. So things like React Native, things like Flutter will actually use kind of a style of MVU pattern. While like the cross-compile list, you can see like I'm running out of space here. Xamarin, again, since it's XAML and C#, Uno platform and .NET MAUI, they will use a lot of MVVM because it's just a more of a natural fit. It all comes down to what fits, right? Again, if you're doing Xamarin, again, a lot of things are evolving, but a lot of things are actually staying the same. So these are some slides that have been around for a long time, but this is now Xamarin iOS or Xamarin Android, now called .NET for iOS, .NET for Android. It's just baked into .NET. And again, this is where you're building the UI head separately. You can do an MVU style for just the UI part of it, but the shared business logic in C#, that's just up to you, however you want to, whatever pattern that works. And this is the Xamarin.Forms approach, eventually the .NET MAUI approach, and this is where MVVM really fits nicely. So we are writing abstracted UI, and the UI is either completely in C# or completely in XAML, and MVVM fits very nicely. This is MAUI, as you all know. It's coming early next year, and the tools are great, and it's great to be able to have the same code base run on Windows and Mac now. So again, great to be able to target desktop and mobile. Desktop, I'm just going to, let me see my time. Yeah, I'm doing okay. Desktop, based on who you talk to, this is a little scary, but for an old man like me, this is liberating that I have so much of choice. So these are all the things I could think of as to how you write a Windows desktop app today, right? And out of this, WPF, UWP, WinUI 3, absolutely MVVM is the way to go. If you want to do web stuff on and bring them in either through an Electron shell or kind of Blazor web views, those are also very welcome, and that will end up being a little bit of MVU style pattern. Things like Uno or Avalonia will again fit more with MVVM. If you want to do Mac or Linux, again, lots of options. Again, depending on what you do, you might be doing MVU or MVVM. Mac Catalyst is great, and that kind of lends a little bit to the MVU style with making the bridge from UIKit to AppKit. So a lot of good things happening, but most of us who do Xamarin.Forms, who do .NET MAUI, we are in the XAML and C# ecosystem, and it's a good place to be. What we don't realize sometimes is, what the new MVU style does is it shows us that we may have created like a little barrier to entry. Things are maybe a little difficult for folks to come in and start. We have rich ecosystem, we have all these frameworks, but for somebody who's just starting out, it may be a little overwhelming. So we can simplify things and kind of start from the scratch and then bring in these frameworks as and when we need to. So lots of applications of MVVM, obviously, in the XAML and C# space. Web, if you're still doing web, I'm an old man, like I said. I've done a lot of Silverlight, and this was fantastic. MVVM with Silverlight for the web. Yeah, the whole plugins model is done. There are ways to bring XAML to the web if you really want to, but that's where we started. But modern web depends a lot on, like for .NET developers, we are excited about Blazor, and that's a little bit of an MVU pattern. You can run things on server side, you can run things on client side with WebAssembly. If you are building like desktop and mobile apps with Blazor, you're looking at progressive web apps or Electron or Blazor WebView, you will likely lean more towards the MVU pattern. Gerald is talking about Prism. Yes, I will get into Prism because otherwise my good friend Dan is going to give me a hard time that I didn't show Prism. So absolutely I will. Yeah, I'm like 14 minutes in. Let's get into code. But before we go, just a real quick shout out. I'm obviously biased, but if you're building mobile or web or desktop applications, look around. Hopefully you're not reinventing the wheel. A lot of the UI is done for you. And again, look around. We are not the only ones, and competition keeps us on our feet. But look at the Telerik UI tooling, if you may, for all of your web, desktop, and mobile apps. And if you want to do JavaScript, then we got you covered as well. But definitely look around and choose the best UI that works for your app. Okay, I'm done. I'm done with slides. That was a lot of speaking. Familiar Silverlight, yes. All right, so MVVM. Let's start with MVVM because that's more of the reality right now, while MVU is something we are kind of starting out playing. So let's bring up Visual Studio, and now this one's the regular 2019. Let's start with kind of a default state of like the present state, right? So if you do a file, new project, right? And you pick Xamarin.Forms, what do you get out of the box? Like this is our present like production reality, right? So you get You get the .NET Standard project, you get iOS, Android, and other platform-specific ones, and you end up with a project that's fairly simple, but there are some pain points that .NET MAUI is trying to address. But everything starts out here with XamL. It's just regular. And let me know if I need to bump up the fonts anymore. But you have your application, and when XamL starts up, you have your platform lifecycle events, and then main page is the first page, and we are newing that up as a navigation page because we do want to do a little bit of navigation here. And when you come to main page XAML, this is all like pure XAML. This is just literally out of the box. You get a stack layout, you get some labels, and this one here does not have anything built in. So you are getting a kind of a clean slate to start off, and it's up to you on how to build up on this, right? So what I have here is a button that says navigate, and when you click on that, there is an event handler that is sitting right here in the code behind. I don't need a breakpoint here. So you'll see that the basics of like data binding and navigation are actually built into Xamarin.Forms, right? So you don't need to do anything else. And when I go to the second page essentially just says, hey, I have a label here. So let's go ahead and run this. And I'm going to pick iPhone 13 because it's iPhone like update season. I know Gerald and a few of you got the new iPhones. I'm Team Blue, by the way. I know a lot of you are Team Blue as well. I haven't updated in like 2 years. So it was time. And now I can run on iOS 15. Xcode 13 is out of beta. It's a good time. You don't have to switch around between beta and older stuff as well anymore. All right, so this is the native default Xamarin.Forms experience. You got a bunch of text, and then when you hit navigate, you go to the other page, right? We are pushing that first page into a stack, and when we hit back, it just pops it out of the stack, and we have some navigation, right? So what is so wrong about this, right? If you ask me, nothing really is wrong about this, right? I have actually shipped apps to the store where I literally started from file new project. Here's the problem, right? I have a clicked button event handler that is sitting right here. And on my code behind, I have a direct reference to the second page that I'm going to. I have shipped apps with event handlers in my code behind, right? This is not your like grandma's .NET, and no offense to your grandma, I'm sure she's wonderful, but there are no more memory leaks. This is fine to do. Like there's a whole kind of philosophy that says pain-driven development. You should look for remedies when something is causing you pain. Otherwise, you're fine, right? So don't let people kind of force you into any of these patterns. But obviously, when you start building real-world apps and you have lots of views, this is not very good because it's not clean separation of concerns. But again, this is your starting point, and it's up to you on how you want to build up from this, right? So this is what you get, and everything is out there, and you can start kind of creating folders and having that separation slowly. You don't need to bring in a framework right away. But if you were interested, let me show you what the flip side looks like. And let's start with Prism, and I'm going to show you maybe MVVM Cross a little bit as well. Oh, folks are already on the next beta. Okay, I'm slow then. All right. So now this is bringing in Prism, right? So MVVM framework, what difference does it make as we are starting up, right? So you see the dependencies here. That's Prism Unity. Probably needs an upgrade here, but when we start up, now we are not starting as just an application. Now it's a Prism application, right? And in our app XAML, we have a few more things. We have a Prism application that we are starting up, and most importantly, we are kind of doing a navigation service. So we are letting the navigation service do the navigation between the views and not having each of the views do it themselves. And everything needs to be registered first, right? So we have the main page, navigation page, and so on. And then we start seeing view models. View models are essentially like the orchestrator. They kind of derive from a bindable base, so you get a bunch of things for free. One of the most common paradigms we do is the iNotify property change, INP. So this is a way for your objects to let the UI know that something changed. So you can go repaint the UI and do a data binding. That's all built in. So you get a bunch of things here from the get-go. And if you're doing iOS or Android, you will see like specific things on their app delegate or other main program.cs where we initialize Xamarin.Forms and you register some of those things. Beyond that, here's where the same app looks a little different, right? So I have a label here, and then I have a button. But now the button doesn't have a click event handler. It has a command. It has a binding to something else that's in code. And that code does not live in the code behind. That lives in the view model that says, hey, I see that you're trying to navigate, and the view model can know a thing about the other views, but not the individual views itself. So now we are navigating, but again, the views don't do it themselves. So let's go ahead and run this real quick. And again, this is just a hello world example. Yeah, pain-driven development. That's what we got to do. So it should be building soon, maybe. No, did I not hit run? I did not hit run. Come back. There we go. So starting page, welcome to Xamarin.Forms. When I hit navigate, same deal. Now you'll notice that this one has a title here, the secondary page, and it says I'm the other one. But that secondary page title is also done through a little bit of data binding here, right? So when we go from page 1 to page 2, we can actually carry parameters that the navigation service can bring in with it. So we have some context as to where we are coming from. And then in the other page view model, I have a thing called the title. So when we go to the second page, we can actually set the title of the page to a binding property. So this is data binding 101. We are just carrying a parameter from page 1 and setting the title on the other one. So a little bit more separation. And again, with that, you get the options to kind of isolate your code better and be able to write unit tests for them. So let me show you a few more iterations of this. And I'll be hurting feelings if I don't show some of the other things that are around. This is MVVM Cross. Again, a lot of our friends over in Europe are responsible for this. And this is, again, similar idea, but just done a little differently. This one is, another concept that you see thrown around a lot is IOC and dependency injection. IOC is more of a general pattern. It's inversion of control. It's not letting the program run its course, letting other things like events and other things run the course of how the program and the flowchart runs. And dependency injection is a part of, is a type of IOC. So both Prism and both MVVM Cross and any other MVVM framework will likely give you an option to plug in your services so you can bring in the things that you need. So here you'll notice that the application XAML essentially starts out with an MVX forms application. I have my first view model here. This is kind of their sample hello world application. Notice how it starts from their MVX view model. We have a navigation service, obviously. There is one property called nickname, right? And it starts out saying, what is your nickname? And then there's a command here that the About Us page is actually showed through a command, and then the navigation service brings up the About view model and lets you see that. If you look at firstpage.xaml, this one has some on-platform specific things, but at the core of it, it's like one label, enter your nickname, and then who are you? And this label here is bound to the hello, the string, and the hello string essentially has hello and then your nickname to it, right? I wish VS for 2019 will remember like the simulators I want to run. I never want to run on the iPod. So let's go switch that up to MVVM Cross. And let's see once it comes back up. Okay, nickname, we are going to say XamExpert. And you can see like how as I'm typing it, it picks up. And when I go to the About page, it's showing the About page through that navigation service and that view model. So a couple of things here that you saw were different is because how the app is being started up and how we are registering things, how we are letting the navigation service do the navigation, and kind of relieving the code behind from doing more of its own and not having knowledge of the rest of your app. So that's kind of the key to having the separation of concerns. Now, these are simple things, and I'm going to risk a little bit of time here, but I want to show you something here. Let's see if I can. I'm going to close this, and let's see if I can open this one up. Now, I'm not trying to show you any UI per se, but just more so of an app. So again, I work on this. Telerik is our thing. And if I go over to mobile components, we have MAUI, but the Xamarin one is the one I'm showing you. If you hit that try now button, just to kind of show you the code that I'm showing you, you don't need to install anything. If you don't want to, if you have an iOS or an Android or a Windows device, go to the App Store, search for Telerik, and you're going to see the app that I'm about to show you, just to kind of make a point as to like what's possible here. So this is a real world app, right? It has literally hundreds of views and view models. It's a heavy app, right? Now I only have the iOS version here, but there's Android, there's UWP here as well. So let's see if I can go ahead and run this real quickly. Like I said, it is a heavy app. It does a lot of things. But what I'm trying to show you here is here's a real world app that is in the stores, and it's kind of our showcase app. And it has all of our UI, and I'm not trying to show you the UI, but I'm trying to make a point that you can do MVVM without actually doing an MVVM framework, right? So the app launches up, and you can play around with all of the UI. You can see how, and we also give you the source code for this, so you can look around how we built this app. So it has a list of like all of our UI, which is like tons and tons of it. But just to kind of get started, like how is this app launching, and how are we doing stuff? We have dark mode, which is so nice to just read the app theme and just like flip it. But right down here is our featured controls, right? We have like 6 or 7 featured controls every release, and I can swipe through that. So that's like a kind of a little slider view. So if I go ahead and stop this for a second, this one here, the .NET standard library that's powering this app, this one here, if you look at the dependencies, it has all the Microsoft stuff. It has Xamarin.Forms, but it does not have any MVVM. Right? This is not using any MVVM framework. It is literally on Xamarin.Forms, right? Just to kind of show you that much of this is built in. Like we do apps for like WPF. Those are sample apps where we use Prism. We use other MVVM frameworks. But here's a showcase of an app with hundreds of views, where everything is just separated out nicely without any MVVM framework, right? So we have the controls and the examples, we have converters, we have behaviors and effects, and everything is right here, all the helpers, but no MVVM, right? So here's a quick example of how things are plugged in. So when we start out, maybe the text is a little too big for me. So here's the slide view template, which is the initial like featured controls. You'll notice that eventually, let me see what that is. So we have the app bar, and we have the list view, and then eventually, like that's the slide view, which has the carousel type of controls, and that's just an item source. And again, we are using basic things that are built into Xamarin.Forms, like the bindings, the navigation service. It's kind of inbuilt, and that's what we are using. So just to kind of point out, you don't need to. So everything is coming from this featured collection, and this is kind of a classic way in which everybody does MVVM. So the featured list here is of the type observable collection of the type control view. So every control is of like it kind of inherits from a control view model that gets it a bunch of things. Like every control has like, the featured flags, and there's a configuration service. There is a control view model that has the name of the control, all of the details about the control. Is it in beta, is it in CTP or whatever? And we end up using just reading an XML to show you which ones are the featured models. So the only thing I'm trying to show you here is you don't need an MVVM framework unless you absolutely benefit from from what it brings. You might have a team of 1, you might have a team of 30. So do what works for your application, right? So that's what I will say. Okay, what else? Yeah, I wanted to show you this, and okay, let's switch gears to something else here. I have what, 10 minutes left, I think. So let's let's look at Comet, right? Because we have talked about MVVM and we know how to do that. Let's talk about Comet. Oh, and actually, before we go, let's talk about .NET MAUI first. So you saw Pedro and you saw other folks today who are mostly on Windows, and it's a great experience because Visual Studio 2022 Preview 4 is out, and you have the templates, you have everything lined up for you. For those of you on a Mac like me, it's still CLI VS 2024 for Mac is coming along. It's not there yet, and you can still load up a .NET MAUI project, but some things are just not working. But CLI is not bad at all. So I can show you what the default experience is like and what has changed actually. So let me bump up my fonts here. If I do a .NET, list of my SDKs. So this is all the .NETs that I have, and it's so nice. It's just like one folder. I can blow it away. So nice to have .NET be so agile to work with. So these are all the previews that I've had, like preview 1 going back to like February, all the way to RC1, and then RC2 is also in the works. So if I do clear and if I do a .NET new, let's look at all the templates I have. These are exactly the same templates that Visual Studio uses behind the scenes. It's the same command line templates. Notice I have iOS and Android, and I have WPF and all the good stuff. And here are all my .NET MAUI templates. I actually have more MAUI templates than you see in VS 2020 because it's CLI. So I can start with some of these things. You don't see the Comet unless you actually install it. This is so nice to be able to just start up a .NET MAUI app. And let me take you to a .NET MAUI app. Just to kind of see how it's different. So I think I have a directory called Maui Hello, which has Maui Hello. That's my kind of Hello World project. Oh no, is it not called Maui Hello? Hold on. It is called Maui Hello. All right. All right. No, it is not called Maui Hello for some reason. Okay, let me go look at this. Hang on for just 1 second. I was pretty sure it was called Maui Hello. So here is my Maui Hello. Oh, it actually, so this is the new one. So it actually doesn't even have a Maui Hello like sub project. So I still go back to this. You can do a .NET restore. And here is the .NET restore, the .NET build with the TFM to say, go run this. So we can clear this up and we can just go fire this up. So this is doing a .NET build, and this is the latest Maui bits running on .NET 6 RC1. And preview 8. So the default iOS simulator is an iPad mini because Apple wants you to get a new iPad mini 6th generation. But running iOS 15, you can switch up whichever simulator you want to use. Let's look at the chat room real quickly. Yes, MVU. I'm getting to it. Give me a second. Yes. So this is just a native .NET MAUI project, which all of you, I'm sure, have played with it. But if I pull up the code here, I have VS Code here on my path, so I can pull this up. So the one change that I will show you that is important here is the Maui program.cs, right? This is the latest bits, and what it's doing here is utilizing the host builder pattern, which is common in Blazor and other web frameworks. What this will allow us to do is it's doing fonts and images here, but this is where your dependency injection goes. If you look at the XAML, like nothing really has changed, like how app starts up. This is all pretty standard, and just main page being pointed to navigation page, or you can do a navigation page by yourself. So nothing is phenomenally changed, but except for the bootstrapping of the app, this is actually real nice because you don't have to do dependency injection on your own. You can just bring this in, register right here in your host builder. Okay, so MVU. Let's switch gears real quick to MVU. If you wanted to do MVU, right? So this was funny. I pulled up this URL. If you do a search on MVU, if you just want to learn more about MVU, right? So there's this gentleman named Thomas Band. I think he's from Germany. So he wrote up an absolutely beautiful post on MVU, like explaining what it is. So I remember like last year, Microsoft Build had happened, and for the first time we heard, like in 2020, we heard about .NET MAUI, and like MVU might be supported. And Scott Hunter's post actually pointed to this URL because it was such a nice article to read. But the very next day, he wrote up another article to say, yeah, what you're doing is not really MVU. but that's the point. It's nobody can be judgmental here. It's up to us to figure out how to implement a certain design pattern. But if you want to go look at MVU, like this is a fantastic post on that explains what it is. So you have a program which is kind of like the view model. It's the orchestrator. It's where your execution begins, and then the model here is more so like a state, like I said, and the changes over time. The commanding is not changed. The messaging, it doesn't change. The update function here, this is the key. This is the one where the program essentially loops over this update function over and over and over again. And it tries to see what has changed and render the DOM or render the visual tree accordingly, right? So that's it pretty much, right? And it's up to you to how to do MVU. So this is James Clancy and a few other really smart folks. I was actually talking to James last night because like some things are actually not quite updated yet. He's gotten a pull request in to run on the latest bits, or maybe it's already in yet because it was waiting on a review. Now it's already in, so I should be able to. This is an experiment, right? And I don't speak for James or the .NET team, but like we have to look at priorities when .NET MAUI hits GA. I doubt this will be ready because again, you have to go with the masses. But this is a fantastic experiment in terms of how he's using the codes, like the source code generators. So take a look at this, and he's got some great examples on how MVU works and how it is. If I pull this up, hold on for a second. Let's see. Okay, I'm going to pull up two apps here. First is the default, which is the MAUI Comet, right? So let's look at that. And I was having a hard time running this. Maybe the templates have been fixed, and maybe we can run it. I can give that a try. But let's look at the code as to what's happening here. This is a super simple like a counter app. So you'll notice like this one here. It is using a lot of the same like the handlers that .NET MAUI uses, right? But everything here is in hold on, platform. Where's the exact code? Main page.cs. Okay, so this is just a click counter, right? Yes, VS Code. I know you can't load up some of those things. So here's the state: read-only state, Comet, new, and here are some UI paradigms that are new. VStack is essentially a vertical stack layout, right? So you have a text box that's counts the number of rides you have taken on a Comet. You have a button, and this Comet thing is essentially a custom object, and the Comet ride has one property called integer called rides, and then we add to the ride. So you can click on that button, and this counter goes up, right? So this whole body thing is the update function, right? So I have 7 minutes left. I can try running this, but let me show you a different app which I was able to run because this is a little older. So take a look at this one here. This is from a couple of months back. So this one here, in terms of dependencies, same like NuGet package that Clancy has put up, just a little older. So you'll notice that this one actually does not have Xamarin.Forms, but it is using a lot of the same structures that we use, some of the renderers that were still being migrated over to the handlers, but it is using Xamarin Essentials, right? So same app, but here on my main page.cs, I have write the comment. I have a main page that's inheriting from view, and then here's my body, right? And in my body, I have a V stack. There's an H stack for horizontal. There's a Z stack as well, which is kind of like the Z index. Like it gets a little confusing sometimes. But one of the things that people get a little hung up on is like MVU by default tries to do one-way binding, and you're like, but two-way binding is so much better. It's not like it cannot do two-way binding. It absolutely does, except you don't see it because it's not explicit. It's just done because when the view updates itself and the state of the application changes, the UI will update. So let me go ahead and run this real quick. And then if I have time, I'll try to get the new template. And it looks like that pull request just went in. So I can give that a try. But this one here is the older thing, but same idea. Like some of the bits are older, but you get the idea. So we'll give this a second to write. Okay, comment. All right, so now we have a username. and we have a password, like a very basic screen here. And then we have some text, and we have a slider. So let's go ahead and start typing something in here. My user ID is Sam, and my password is obviously 123. Now, here's a slider, okay? And the slider's bound to a thing called the security value, which is essentially a float, right? So it's just a state, but it's a state of a certain type. Now, this is where the binding comes in, like, because you see the next text property here. This is like, how brave are you with your security? This is just me being silly with my demos. So it is tied to that value, right? So kind of implicitly, you get that two-way binding. So as I move this thing around, you see the braveness factor is changing. So you absolutely do have two-way data binding. You can update other parts of your UI based on whatever else is going on, or if the value of the properties of your objects change, you absolutely can update the UI. It's just a matter of how quickly and this is where the performance comes in. And this is what like React Native does really well. Like this body, this whole function, like you see this function here, this ends all the way down here, right? That's your entire UI, and that whole thing is running continuously, right? So this is where performance is important, and how quickly can you just diff on it and only render the things that are changed and nothing more, right? So you don't want to repaint the UI over and over again. So here's my sensitivity slider, and you can see the braveness factor move around. And when I hit the login button here, notice what I'm doing here is just like clearing out all of the values, like just wiping them out. So when I hit the login, obviously everything goes away. So it's a kind of a myth that MVU doesn't do two-way data binding. It is kind of implicit. You just don't say binding mode or binding context like two-way data binding. So that's it. That's MVU. Like I have a feeling that this will stay experimental, but again, I don't speak for James, but experimental for some time, but eventually we will get there. And this may not be for everybody, right? So if you are like a hardcore XAML dev, you might look at this and say, why is this so verbose? Why are we doing everything here? This kind of looks like JavaScript, and that's okay. You don't have to subscribe to this model. But if you are coming, again, we have to be conscious, like .NET devs, like we have gotten ourselves into a mode where we think like ours is the best way and it's a walled garden. There are a lot of people who are just starting out from coming out of college. There are people who are coming from other backgrounds like Node.js. Like for them, this will feel much more natural. So it's a matter of choice, right? And choice is a good thing. Flexibility is a good thing. So I have 1 minute left, I think. I can try getting the new templates, but folks, I was talking to James last night. So there was a pull request that just went in because they weren't working with the new bits. So you will see that what the problem was in the CS proj. The reloadify, this was using 1.6, which is the older style. And then when you started doing that, it didn't do the host builder and gotten some of the newer bits that MAUI apps need to bootstrap. But otherwise, you can fire up a Comet app just the same way you fire up a .NET MAUI app. It's the same .NET build. So give that a shot. The URL, I mean, look for Comet UI. It's right off the .NET thing. I think James was fighting the CI pipelines last night, but looks like that pull request is in. So give this a spin. And I'm going to stop here because we are at time. I want to be sensitive. But again, I'll go back to the point. Pain-driven development, pick the right tools for your job. Don't let anybody force you into this. It should be something that comes natural. Yes, you're signing up for a little bit of complexity because you're having that separation of concern, but in the long run, that gives you maintainability. It gives you kind of sanity in your code base, right? So again, Microsoft slide here, Water on some software. We have all the amazing tools to go change the world. So let's do that. And thank you for hanging out with me for like 45 minutes. You have all been amazing. So thank you very much. Hope you have a great rest of your day and great rest of Xamarin Expert Day.
All right, thank you so much, Sam. And I've heard you say it a couple of times, like, don't stick to the rules of the design pattern that you're, of your choosing, because it's all about what matters to you. And also with this channel, I do a lot of things and I get a lot of questions like, what is the way to do things? And I always tell them, like, there is no one way. I just pick what you like. And I really liked a couple of the things that you said here, like, wherever it hurts, change that. But other than that, why change it? And let someone else tell you, like, this is the way to do it. I mean, if you're comfortable with it, that's like the most important thing. So I'm definitely going to borrow some inspiration from you here for future videos. Be prepared to find that. Sam, thank you so much for hanging out with us right here at the Exam Expert Day.